5 days before my husband's company nearly collapsed at his mother's dinner table, Mark looked me in the eye and told me I was embarrassing him. The strange part was that I didn't cry. A year earlier I would have. 6 months earlier I probably would have locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet so the kids couldn't hear me, and tried to figure out what I had done wrong. That night, though, I only looked across the restaurant table at the woman sitting beside my husband and thought, "Keep talking, Mark. You have no idea what you're about to lose." "Sarah." Mark snapped his fingers once in front of me. I blinked. "What?" His mouth tightened. I asked if you wanted wine. "No thanks." He glanced at my dress again, the same way he had before we left the house. Not angry. Worse. Disappointed. "You sure?" "Yes." He leaned toward me and lowered his voice. "You could at least try to loosen up tonight." I stared at him. "I'm sitting at dinner with your clients." I'm smiling. "What exactly would you like me to do?" Mark gave a tired little laugh. That tone. Across the table, Ashley Reed tilted her head. "Everything okay?" Her voice was soft and sweet, like she was genuinely worried. That was one of Ashley's talents. She could insult you without saying a single insulting word. Mark immediately smiled at her. "Fine. Sarah's just tired." I looked at him. "I'm not tired." Ashley gave me a sympathetic smile. "2 kids will do that to you." I almost laughed. Ashley was 27, unmarried, childless, and had been in Columbus for less than a year. But somehow she had become an expert on my life. Mark's biggest client, Dan Whitaker, lifted his glass. "Well, Mark, you've got a good team. Ashley's been fantastic with the account." Mark's face brightened. "She handles a lot for me." Ashley lowered her eyes modestly. "Mark gives me too much credit." "No, I don't." The way he said it made something twist in my stomach. Then Dan turned toward me. "And Sarah, what do you do?" Before I could answer, Mark spoke. "She's home with the kids." That was it. Not Sarah used to work in commercial lending. Not Sarah helped me put together my first financing package. Not Sarah sold the apartment she owned before we married, so I could keep the company alive. Just, she's home with the kids. I looked at Mark. He had already turned back toward Dan. Ashley was wearing a cream-colored designer dress I recognized from a boutique in Easton Town Center. A few days earlier, Emma had asked me for a pair of $90 sneakers. I told her we should wait until next month because Mark had said we needed to watch discretionary spending. Ashley's shoes probably cost $900. I knew because I had seen the charge. Not on our household card. On a Miller Logistics corporate account. I hadn't been looking for it. Mark had left a statement on the kitchen counter, and the logo caught my eye. Harper Lane, I had said that night. Mark had looked up from his phone. What? This charge. $864. He had taken the paper from me. Client relations. At a women's boutique? His jaw had tightened. "Why are you going through company statements?" I remember staring at him. I picked it up off the counter. "You know what I mean." "No, actually, I don't." He folded the statement. Ashley needed clothes for client meetings. "With the company credit card?" "Yes." "Does the company buy your other employees' wardrobes too?" That was when he had looked at me as though I disgusted him. "God, Sarah. When did you become this petty?" Petty. That word stayed with me all week. So did another sentence. "You wouldn't understand how business works anymore." Mark had said that too. The funny thing was, there had been a time when Mark asked me how business worked. 8 years earlier, Miller Logistics Group had barely been a company. It was Mark, a rented office, 2 leased trucks, and a business plan held together by optimism and caffeine. The first bank turned him down. Then the second. The third loan officer was nicer about it, but the answer was still no. No established cash flow. No meaningful collateral. Too much concentration risk. Not enough operating history. Mark came home that night and sat at our kitchen table with both hands over his face. "I'm done," he said. I was still working at Huntington then, reviewing commercial credit files. I sat across from him. "No, you're not." He laughed bitterly. "They all said the same thing. They're not saying the business can't work. They're saying the bank doesn't have enough protection. Same difference." "No." He looked up. "What do you want me to do, Sarah? Pull assets out of thin air?" I didn't answer immediately. I owned a 1-bedroom condo in Grandview Heights. I'd bought it at 25 before I met Mark. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had equity in it. I also had excellent credit. 3 weeks later, I sold it. When the money hit my account, I transferred most of it into the business. Mark cried. Actually cried. He wrapped both arms around me in the kitchen and held me so tightly I could barely breathe. I swear to you, he whispered, I'll pay you back. I laughed against his shoulder. We're married. There's no you and me. He pulled back and held my face. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this. For a long time I didn't. When Emma was born, I took maternity leave. When Noah came 3 years later, Mark was traveling constantly. Daycare for 2 kids was expensive, and his schedule was unpredictable. One night he said, why are we paying strangers to raise our children? I knew what he was asking. I like my job. I know. I worked hard for it. I know. He took my hand. Just for a couple years. Until the company settles down. I believed him. So I resigned. I became the person who handled pediatric appointments, school forms, birthday parties, groceries, laundry, summer camps, stomach bugs, soccer cleats, teacher conferences, and every invisible thing that made Mark's life possible. And somehow, over the years, Mark stopped calling that work. Then Ashley arrived. First, I liked her. That was the humiliating part. She was the younger sister of one of Mark's college friends, Ryan Reed. When she moved from Cincinnati to Columbus, Mark told me she was struggling. She doesn't know anybody here, he said. I was making dinner. Invite her over. He looked surprised. You don't mind? Why would I? Ashley showed up that Sunday with grocery store flowers and a bright smile. You must be Sarah, she said, hugging me before I could decide whether we were hugging people. Mark talks about you all the time. Back then I believed her. 2 months later, Mark gave her a job. 3 months after that, she had a new title, Director of Client Relations. I asked Mark what qualified her for it. He stared at me. Excuse me? She was doing administrative work 2 months ago. She's good with people. So are half the people in Columbus. His expression hardened. Why do you have a problem with her? I asked a question. No. You took a shot at her. I asked what experience she has. Mark pushed his chair back. This is exactly what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? You've become so negative. Then came the apartment. Ashley said downtown rent was too high. Mark said the company needed her near clients. So Miller Logistics paid the deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment in the short north. Temporary, he told me. 6 months later, the company was still paying. When I asked why the lease was only in Ashley's name, Mark rolled his eyes. It was easier. For who? Sarah. No, tell me. Easier for who? He gave me that look again. That tired, superior look. When did you become so suspicious? Every conversation ended that way. I would ask about something he had done. Mark would put me on trial for noticing. By the time Thanksgiving was approaching, even the kids were noticing. One Saturday morning, Emma walked into the kitchen holding the family iPad. Mom, I was pouring coffee. What, honey? She turned the screen toward me. Ashley's Instagram page was open. There was Mark, standing beside her at a luxury car dealership. Ashley was smiling next to a white Mercedes. Her caption read, "Best shopping partner ever." Emma's eyebrows pulled together. Dad said he couldn't come with me today because he had meetings. I put down the coffee. That morning, Mark had promised to take Emma shopping for her birthday. At 9, he'd said something urgent came up. I had taken her instead. I forced my voice to stay even. Maybe they had a work appointment near there. Emma looked at me the way 10-year-olds look at adults when they know they're being lied to. Mom. I swallowed. Before I could answer, Noah wandered in. He looked at the picture. Oh, Ashley. Emma snapped. Dad was supposed to be with me. Noah shrugged. Dad likes Ashley. The kitchen went quiet. I turned toward him. What do you mean? He climbed onto a stool. He smiles when she calls. Emma looked at me. Noah kept talking. He doesn't smile when you call. Enough, Emma whispered. But the words were already there. I carried them with me all day. That evening, I called Mark's mother. Linda had always been kind enough to me, but when it came to Mark, kindness had limits. I think something is wrong, I told her. With Mark? With Ashley? Linda sighed. That sound told me everything before she spoke. Sarah, she's practically family. He's paying for her apartment. He's helping her. He gave her a corporate card. She works for him. She used it to buy designer clothes. Linda paused. Then she said, Mark has always been generous. I closed my eyes. Linda. Sarah, successful men have a lot of pressure. You've been home with the children for several years. Maybe some of what he does for business just looks strange to you. I felt my face burn. I used to review commercial loans. I know that, honey. Her tone said she did not care. Then she added, you need to be careful not to push him away because you're insecure. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. 3 nights later, Mark brought home a folder. He dropped it on the kitchen island. Need you to sign these. I was packing Noah's lunch. What is it? Bank paperwork. I wiped my hands and opened the folder. The first page was a personal financial statement. The second included spouse information. I stopped. Why does the bank need this? Mark didn't look up from his phone. Standard update. For what? Financing. What financing? Now he looked at me. Company expansion. How much? His eyes narrowed. Why? Because you're asking for my financial information. It's routine. I started reading. Mark reached across the island and pulled the folder away. You don't need to analyze it. My hand stayed on the counter. You asked me to sign it. I said it's standard. That doesn't answer my question. He exhaled sharply. This is why I stopped talking business with you. I stared at him. Because I read documents before signing them? Because you turn everything into an interrogation? No. I ask questions. You haven't worked in banking in years, Sarah. There it was. He gave a small laugh. You're not in that world anymore. For a second I couldn't speak. Then I asked quietly, what world am I in, Mark? He looked annoyed. Don't do this. Do what? Make everything dramatic. He picked up the folder. Forget it. I'll handle it. He walked upstairs. I stood in the kitchen wondering how a man could build a company with my money, my credit, and my signature, then look me in the face and tell me I no longer understood the world that had helped create it. That night I didn't sleep much. The next morning Mark acted like nothing had happened. He kissed Noah on the head, told Emma to have a good day, asked me, did you make coffee? Yes. In the pot? Yes. Thanks. He walked upstairs to shower. I was clearing breakfast when the family iPad chimed. A calendar notification appeared. Mark had stopped using the shared calendar months earlier. Or so I thought. I almost swiped it away. Then I saw the title.
Elle Banton Consultation.
Underneath it. Family Law. My fingers went cold. I opened the event. The appointment had been 2 weeks earlier. I knew the firm. Everyone in Columbus knew firms like Hale Benton, divorce, custody, asset division. Mark had already met with a divorce lawyer. And 3 nights earlier, he had put bank documents in front of me and asked for my signature. I heard the shower running upstairs. For the first time in months, everything became very quiet inside my head. Ashley's apartment, the corporate card, the secret financing, the personal financial statement, the way Mark had started treating me like an employee he planned to fire. He wasn't simply drifting away from me. He was preparing something. And whatever he was preparing, he still needed something from me first. My name, my credit, my signature. I took a screenshot of the calendar event and sent it to myself. Then I deleted the notification from the screen. By the time Mark came downstairs, I was pouring coffee. He looked at me. You okay? I smiled. Fine. He picked up his travel mug. Good. At the door he turned. Oh, and if I send those documents electronically, can you sign them today? I looked straight at him. I'll take a look. He smiled like he had one. Thanks, babe. The door closed. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway. Then I sat at the kitchen table and searched my contacts. I had not spoken to Rachel Collins in almost 4 years. We used to work side by side reviewing commercial credit. Rachel once joked that I could smell a bad loan before the borrower entered the building. My thumb hovered over her name. Then I typed, Hey Rachel, it's Sarah Miller. Are you free for coffee sometime this week? I paused, then added, I need to figure out exactly what I'm still liable for. Her reply came less than a minute later. Sarah, of course. Then another message appeared. Is this about Mark's company? I stared at the screen. That question made my stomach tighten, because I had never told Rachel Mark was applying for anything. I typed slowly. Why would you ask that? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, Rachel replied, Let's not do this over text. I read the sentence twice. Upstairs, one of the kids called for me. I locked my phone and stood. 4 years, I had believed the worst thing Mark could do was stop loving me. I was wrong. The worst thing was realizing he might have been planning to use me one last time before he left. What Mark did not know was that I had spent years reading loan agreements people barely understood. I knew what happened when a guarantee disappeared. I knew what happened when a bank stopped trusting the numbers. And very soon, Mark Miller was going to learn that the wife he thought had forgotten everything about finance had only been quiet. Not stupid, not helpless, and definitely not finished. Rachel chose a coffee shop near downtown, far enough from my old bank that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. When I walked in, she was already sitting in the back with 2 cups on the table. For 1 second, seeing her made me feel 28 again. Before Mark's company, before school pickups and pediatric appointments had replaced credit reports and loan committees. Rachel stood and hugged me. "Look at you." I laughed nervously. "What does that mean?" "It means you still look exactly like Sarah Miller." "That's not what Mark would say." Her smile faded. She sat back down. "Okay, that sounds like we're skipping the small talk." I wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. "I think my husband is planning to divorce me." Rachel didn't react dramatically. That was one thing I had always liked about her. She listened first. "Why?" I told her about Hale Benton, the calendar notification, the consultation, the paperwork Mark had asked me to sign, Ashley, the apartment, the corporate card. By the time I finished, Rachel's expression had changed. Not shock, concern, professional concern. The look she used to get when a borrower's story stopped matching the numbers. "Sarah," she said carefully, "what exactly did you sign when Mark started the company?" "I know I signed a personal guarantee. 1 loan." "I thought so." "You thought so?" I gave her a look. I was married to him. I wasn't reviewing my husband like a borrower. Rachel leaned back. "Do you still have the documents?" "Probably." "Find them." My stomach tightened. "Why?" She took a sip of coffee, buying herself a second. "I can't tell you anything about Mark's banking relationship." "I didn't ask you to." "I know. I'm saying it because I need you to understand there are lines I can't cross." "Rachel." She held up one hand. "But if your name is still attached to a guarantee, you have every right to understand your own legal obligation." I stared at her. "Still attached?" "Some commercial guarantees are continuing." I felt something cold move through my chest. "Meaning?" "Meaning they don't necessarily expire when the first loan gets paid off." I said nothing. Rachel's voice stayed calm. "They can sometimes cover renewals, replacements, extensions, additional credit. It depends on the language." I thought about the folder Mark had brought home, the personal financial statement, the way he had pulled it away from me. He told me it was standard. Rachel's mouth tightened. "That may be true, but standard doesn't mean harmless." I looked down at my coffee. "What if he's applying for a new loan?" Rachel watched me for a moment. "Then you need to know whether he's trying to use your guarantee as part of the credit structure." I looked up. "You know something?" "I know enough to tell you to get your own documents and your own attorney." "Rachel." "I mean it." Her tone sharpened. "If Mark is talking to a divorce lawyer while asking you to sign financial paperwork, stop treating this like a marriage argument." That sentence landed harder than I expected. I whispered, "What should I treat it like?" "A transaction." I almost laughed. "That's cold." "No." Rachel shook her head. "Cold is using your spouse's balance sheet while preparing to leave them." I swallowed. She leaned forward. "Sarah, you spent years underwriting people who told you everything was fine while their cash flow was falling apart." "I remember." "So underwrite your own life." That line stayed with me all day. When I got home, I didn't confront Mark. I didn't ask if he had seen a lawyer. I didn't ask where he had been. I made dinner, helped Noah with spelling, signed Emma's field trip form. Then, after the kids went to bed, I went into the basement. We had 6 plastic bins labeled taxes: school, medical, house, business, and MISC. Mark hated paperwork. I used to organize everything. That irony almost made me laugh. The business bin was dusty. Inside were old tax returns, formation papers, insurance documents, and the original lending package. I sat on the basement floor and started reading. First, it felt strangely familiar. Loan number, borrower, collateral, interest rate, covenants. Then I found it. Personal guarantee. My name was printed at the top. Sarah and Miller. I remembered signing it at a conference table while Mark squeezed my knee under the table. I remembered the lender congratulating us. I remembered Mark taking me to dinner afterward and ordering champagne we could barely afford. I had never looked at the guarantee again. This time I read every line. By the second page, my heart was pounding. The language was broad. Not just the original loan. Extensions, renewals, future indebtedness, Additional advances. I stopped and read it again. Then I found the clause Rachel had warned me about. The guarantee could be terminated prospectively by written notice. Prospectively, not retroactively. I couldn't erase obligations that already existed, but I might be able to stop Mark from attaching me to new ones. I took pictures of every page. Then I called Lauren Price the next morning. I found her through a former coworker. Her office specialized in divorce, complex marital assets, and business ownership. When I sat down across from her, she didn't start with sympathy. She started with a legal pad. What do you own? I blinked. Excuse me? What do you own in your name jointly or through any entity? I opened my mouth, closed it. Lauren waited. Our house is joint. Bank accounts? Joint checking. Joint savings. Mark has business accounts. Retirement? I have an old 401k. He has one too. Company ownership? It's his company. She looked up. Legally or emotionally? I frowned. He formed it. That wasn't my question. I handed her copies of the original documents. Lauren read for several minutes. Then she asked, where did the initial capital come from? I sold a condo I owned before we got married. How much? $180,000 after closing costs and the mortgage. And where did that money go? Into the company. As a gift? I don't know. As a loan? I don't know. Did you receive equity? I don't think so. Lauren looked at me over the papers. You were a commercial credit analyst? Yes. And you didn't document a $180,000 transfer? Heat rushed into my face. No. She didn't judge me. That somehow made it worse. I trusted my husband. Lauren nodded once. Most people do. I looked away. She tapped the guarantee. This matters. Can I get out of it? Not completely. Not necessarily. My shoulders fell. She continued. But there appears to be a method to terminate your guarantee for future extensions of credit. I stared at her. So I can stop him from using me on a new loan? Potentially, yes. We need to review the full credit history and confirm the bank's requirements. And if he already has debt, you don't get to pretend it never existed. I'm not trying to. Good. She folded her hands. My job is not to help you blow up Mark's company. That's not what I want. Are you sure? I thought of Ashley's apartment, the dresses, the way Mark introduced me as if my entire life could be reduced to 4 words. She stays home with the kids. Yes. Lauren watched me. I forced myself to say it again. I don't want to destroy him. What do you want? I looked down at my hands. I want him to stop using me. Lauren nodded. Then that's where we start. Over the next week, I began collecting records. Not stealing. Not breaking into his accounts. Just preserving what I legally had access to. Joint statements. Tax returns. Mortgage documents. Old company correspondence. Transfers. Credit card bills. Every time I found something, I felt less like a wife and more like the person I had been before. The person who checked facts. Then I found the charge from Hale Benton. $450. Paid from our joint credit card. He had used our money to ask a lawyer how to leave me. I stared at the charge for a long time. That night, Mark came home late. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop. He loosened his tie. You're still up? Yes. He opened the refrigerator. What are you doing? Looking at jobs. He froze for half a second. Then he laughed. Jobs? I looked up. Yes. Why? 'Cause I want to go back to work. Mark closed the refrigerator. We've talked about this. No, you talked about it. His expression changed. What's that supposed to mean? It means every time I mention going back, you had a reason it wasn't convenient. That's because the kids need you. They're 10 and 7, Mark. And they're in school most of the day. He crossed his arms. Why now? I kept my face calm. I miss working. He stared at me. You're unhappy? There was something almost insulting about the question. As if my unhappiness had never crossed his mind. I want something that's mine. He laughed once. You have a house. You have a car. You have everything you need. Those aren't the same thing. His jaw tightened. Where is this coming from? I nearly said, you're divorce lawyer. Instead, I closed the laptop. Maybe I'm tired of being told I don't understand the real world. He looked away. Oh my God. You're still upset about that? I wasn't aware there was an expiration date. I was frustrated. You said what you meant. No, I said you haven't worked in banking in years. Exactly. Which is true. I nodded. Okay, That seemed to bother him more than if I had yelled. He studied me. Okay. Mark stepped closer. Sarah, I don't know what's going on with you lately. I almost smiled. For years, I had told him exactly what was going on. He just preferred it when I was emotional enough to dismiss. I'm fine. Are you? Yes. He stared at me another second, then shrugged. Whatever. His phone buzzed. The entire expression on his face softened when he looked at the screen. He turned slightly away. I didn't need to see the name. Who is it? I asked. He glanced at me. Kevin. His CFO. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Mark walked into the den to answer. His voice dropped. Hey. Then after a pause he laughed. A warm, easy laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. I reopened my laptop. The next morning I had an email from Rachel. There's an opening in commercial credit. Not senior. But it's real work. You should apply. I stared at it. My first thought was no. Too long out. Too rusty. Too old to start over. Then I heard Mark's voice in my head. You're not in that world anymore. I clicked the application link. 2 days later Lauren called. I finished reviewing the guarantee language. I stepped into my car so the kids wouldn't hear. And, you can give notice terminating future liability. My hand tightened around the phone. How fast? That depends on delivery and acknowledgement, but the mechanism is there. I closed my eyes. And if Mark is in the middle of applying for additional financing? Lauren paused. That could create a problem for him. How big a problem? I can't tell you without knowing the loan structure. I thought of Rachel's question. Is this about Mark's company? I lowered my voice. I think he's planning something large. Then listen carefully. Lauren's tone became firmer. Do not call the bank yourself and threaten anyone. Do not warn Mark. Do not sign anything he gives you. I won't. We do this properly. Okay. And Sarah? Yes. If you're going to file for divorce, we should discuss timing. My stomach dropped even though I had known the question was coming. I don't know if I'm ready. Lauren didn't push. Then don't file today. I swallowed. But start acting like a person who may need to protect herself tomorrow. That evening, Mark came home in an unusually good mood. He brought takeout from a steakhouse. Noah cheered. Emma looked suspicious. What happened? Mark grinned. Big things. I put plates on the table. What big things? He looked at me. For the first time in weeks, his eyes were full of energy. We're expanding. I kept my expression neutral. The company, new warehouse, more trucks. We're talking serious growth. How are you financing it? His smile faded slightly. Bank debt. How much? Why, there it was again. I shrugged. Just curious. He took a drink. Enough. Emma said, does that mean you'll be home less? Mark barely looked at her. Only at first. Noah frowned. You already work all the time. Mark laughed like it was cute. That's how success works, buddy. I looked at him. How soon does the loan close? His eyes narrowed. Couple weeks. My heartbeat changed. Couple weeks. Thanksgiving was in less than 3. Mark smiled again. Once this closes, everything changes. I looked down at my plate. He had no idea how right he was. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, I checked my email. There was a message from the bank. Not Mark's bank. Mine. Application received. Commercial credit specialist. I smiled before I could stop myself. Then Lauren texted. Need your authorization to prepare formal prospective termination notice. Call me tomorrow. I stared at both messages. One was helping me rebuild my own life. The other could stop Mark from using the life I had already built for him. Upstairs, I heard him talking on the phone. His door was partly open. I passed the hallway and caught Ashley's name. She's fine, Mark said quietly. A pause. Then he laughed. No, Sarah doesn't know anything. I stopped walking. My hand tightened around the laundry basket. Mark continued. Just relax. Once the expansion goes through, everything gets easier. Another pause. His voice softened. I told you. I'll take care of it. I stood there, listening to my husband promise another woman that he would take care of everything. He had said the same words to me once. Back when the company was nothing. Back when my money was good enough. My credit was good enough. My judgment was good enough. I carried the laundry downstairs and set it on the couch. Then I took out my phone. I opened Lauren's message and typed, prepare the notice. 3 words. That was all. Mark thought he was getting ready to leave me. He didn't know I had finally stopped waiting to be left. I signed the notice on a Tuesday morning. Not at home. Not at Mark's office. Not in some dramatic meeting where I slammed papers on a desk and announced I was done being used. I signed it in Lauren Price's conference room with a black pen and a cup of coffee going cold beside me. Lauren watched me finish my name. You understand what this does? Yes. What does it do? I gave her a tired smile. You're testing me? I'm making sure you're not signing angry. I looked down at the document. It terminates my guarantee for future extensions of credit after the notice becomes effective. It doesn't erase existing obligations. It doesn't cancel debt that already exists. It stops Mark from continuing to use my guarantee for new borrowing once the bank receives and processes it. Lauren nodded. Good. I capped the pen. And if his expansion loan depends on me, then the lender will have to reassess. I swallowed. Could they still approve him? Of course. That answer surprised me. Lauren noticed. This isn't a movie, Sarah. You're not pressing a red button that destroys a company. I know. You're removing yourself from future risk. What the bank does after that depends on Mark's financials. I thought of the man who had spent the past year telling me I no longer understood business. Then I guess his financials better be strong. Lauren studied me. That sounded a little more personal. It was. For the first time, she smiled. Fair enough. She slid another paper toward me. And this? My chest tightened. Divorce petition. I didn't touch it. Not today. Lauren didn't argue. Okay, I want the guarantee handled first. I want my job situation settled. And I want to make sure the kids are stable. That's reasonable. I don't want Mark saying I woke up one morning and blew up the family. Lauren leaned back. Sarah, Mark is going to say whatever helps him live with himself. I looked at her. You can't build your decisions around the story he tells afterward. That stayed with me, because I had spent years doing exactly that. Avoiding questions because Mark might call me jealous. Avoiding confrontation because Linda might call me insecure. Avoiding independence because Mark might say I was abandoning the kids. I had gotten so used to defending myself against accusations that hadn't even happened yet. I barely knew what I wanted anymore. Lauren tapped the notice. This is not revenge. I know. This is a boundary. I nodded. That word felt unfamiliar too. A boundary. Not a threat. Not a punishment. Just the point where Mark's access to me ended. 2 days later, I got the call from the bank. Sarah Miller? Yes. This is Daniel Foster with First Central. I'm calling regarding the notice we received concerning your guarantee. I stepped into an empty conference room at work. I had only been back 3 days. That sentence still felt unreal. Back at work. The bank had offered me the commercial credit specialist position after 2 interviews and 1 technical assessment that left my hands shaking. The first interview had been awful, not because I didn't know the answers, because I kept second-guessing myself before I gave them. The hiring manager, Patricia Monroe, asked me how I would evaluate a company with strong revenue growth but weakening cash flow. I started answering, stopped, then apologized. Patricia frowned. Why are you apologizing? I'm rusty. Are you? I looked at the worksheet in front of me. Then I started again. By the time I finished explaining working capital pressure, receivable quality, debt service coverage, and owner distributions, Patricia was smiling. You're not rusty. I laughed nervously. I feel rusty. That's different. 3 days later, they offered me the job. When I told Mark, he stared at me like I had announced I was joining the circus. You got what? A job. At a bank? Yes. Why? I was standing in our bedroom, hanging up 2 new blouses. I turned. Because I applied. That's not what I mean. I know. Mark crossed his arms. We don't need the money. I looked at him. Then why did you tell me last month we needed to cut Emma's birthday budget? His jaw shifted. That's different. How? Because I was talking about household spending. And my income won't be household income? That's not the point. What is the point? He stared at me. I could almost see him trying to find the right argument. Finally he said, who's going to get the kids after school? I arranged the program at school 3 days a week. My mom can help one day. I'll work from home Fridays when possible. You arranged it? Yes. Without talking to me? I laughed once. Mark, you're never home before 6. That doesn't mean you make decisions without me. I looked at him for a long second. Interesting. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Sarah. I went back to hanging the blouse. He hated when I stopped fighting. When I argued, he could call me emotional. When I stayed calm, he had nowhere to put his anger. He leaned against the dresser. What's the salary? I told him. He made a face. You used to make more than that. I know. So you're starting over. Yes. His tone sharpened. You're okay with that? I turned toward him. Yes. That answer bothered him more than anything, because Mark had spent years making starting over sound like failure. I was beginning to understand that sometimes starting over was the first sign you had finally stopped sinking. Now, 2 days into that new life, Daniel Foster from First Central was on the phone. We've acknowledged your notice, he said. I understand. There are existing obligations that remain unaffected. I understand that too. And any future extensions or new credit requests will be subject to reassessment without your continuing guarantee. My heartbeat quickened. Okay, there was a pause. Then Daniel said, Mrs. Miller, I need to be clear that we can't discuss confidential borrower information. I'm not asking you to. Good. His tone softened slightly. I just wanted to confirm that your notice was voluntary. It was. No coercion. No. And you understand the consequences? I looked through the glass wall at my new coworkers moving between offices. Yes, I said. For the first time in a long time, I do. That evening, Mark came home irritated. Not angry yet. Just distracted. He dropped his keys too hard on the counter. Where are the kids? Stairs. Dinner? In the oven. He opened the refrigerator, stared inside, then closed it without taking anything. Kevin called me 3 times today. I kept cutting strawberries for Noah's lunch. Okay, he's freaking out about paperwork. Sounds fun. Mark looked at me. What's with you? What do you mean? You've been weird. I almost laughed. I got a job. That's not what I mean. Then I don't know. His phone rang. He looked at the screen and cursed under his breath. Kevin again? Yes. He answered sharply. What? I stayed where I was. Mark paced toward the den. No, the closing date hasn't changed. A pause. Then his voice became louder. What do you mean they want additional support? I stopped cutting. He turned his back to me. We already gave them everything. Another pause. No, that makes no sense. I kept my face neutral when he looked toward the kitchen. Call me tomorrow. He hung up. I went back to the strawberries. Mark stood there. Did you do something? I looked up. Like what? With the bank. My pulse jumped, but I kept my expression blank. What bank? Don't play dumb. That phrase would have hurt me once. Now it almost made me smile. I'm not. He stepped closer. Did someone contact you? About? He stared at me, then stopped. He couldn't ask directly without telling me what was happening. So he changed direction. Forget it. He grabbed his keys. Where are you going? Out. With who? His face hardened. Seriously? I held up one hand. Never mind. He left. 10 minutes later, Emma came downstairs. Dad mad? No. She gave me the same look she had given me over Ashley's Instagram post. Mom. I sighed. He's stressed about work. Emma sat at the island. Is he mad because you got a job? I looked at her. Why would you think that? Because he was nice until you told him. That hurt more than I wanted it to. Children notice patterns adults worked hard to excuse. I think Dad is just adjusting. Emma picked at the edge of a napkin. I like that you have a job. You do? She nodded. You seem different. How? She shrugged. Like you're listening when I talk. I froze. I always listen. I know. But before, you were always thinking about Dad. I looked away. That one landed deep. She wasn't accusing me. That made it worse. I had spent years telling myself I stayed for the kids. But how much of my attention had gone into managing Mark's moods? Protecting the peace? Explaining his absences? Making excuses? I reached across and squeezed her hand. I'm working on that. Emma squeezed back. I know. A few days later, Ashley came over without warning. I was working from home at the dining room table. She walked in behind Mark carrying 2 shopping bags. I looked up. Mark stopped. Oh, I forgot you were home. I closed my laptop. You forgot I work from home Fridays? Ashley smiled. Hi, Sarah. Hi. She set the bags down. One had the logo of a luxury cosmetics store. The other was from a boutique. Mark noticed me looking. There for a client event. I hadn't asked. That told me everything. Ashley laughed lightly. Mark says I need to look more polished for the new accounts. I leaned back. Does the company have a clothing allowance now? Her smile faltered. Mark's face darkened. Don't start. I asked a question. Ashley held up her hands. I can pay for my own stuff if this is a problem. Mark immediately turned to her. It's not a problem. I watched him. He didn't even realize what he had done. Ashley gave me a small wounded look. I really don't want to cause issues between you two. I nearly admired the performance. You're not causing anything, I said. Mark looked surprised. Ashley did too. I smiled. People make their own choices. The room went quiet. Mark finally said, what is that supposed to mean? Exactly what I said. Ashley picked up the bags. I should go. Mark followed her toward the door. Ashley, wait. I watched him go after her. Not me. Her. Again. But this time something had changed. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt informed. That afternoon Lauren called. The notice is effective. I stepped into the laundry room and closed the door. Already? Yes. And that's it? For future credit, yes. I leaned against the washing machine. What happens now? Now we wait. I hate waiting. I know. I lowered my voice. I think the bank already asked him for something. He came home angry. That would make sense. Lauren. Yes. I want to file. Silence. Then are you sure? I thought of Emma saying I had spent too much time thinking about her father. I thought of Ashley standing in my house with shopping bags paid for by the same company built with my money. I thought of Mark calling me dumb while depending on a guarantee I understood better than he did. Yes. When? Before Thanksgiving. Why before Thanksgiving? Because I don't want to walk into another holiday pretending we're still a family. Lauren's voice softened. Okay. That evening Mark was suddenly cheerful again. He came home with pizza and a bottle of wine. Good news. I looked at him. What? Kevin thinks we can still close before Thanksgiving. My stomach tightened. That soon? Hopefully. He poured himself a glass. Once this financing lands, we're set. For what? Growth. He grinned. Real growth. I studied him. He was so confident. That was the strangest part. He still believed the world would continue arranging itself around his plans. What? He asked. Nothing. He took a drink, then smiled. Mom wants everyone there for Thanksgiving. 4 o'clock. I know. And Ashley's coming. There it was. I set down my fork. Of course she is. Mark's expression hardened instantly. She doesn't have family in Columbus. She has family in Cincinnati. That's not the point. What is the point? He exhaled. Can you please not make Thanksgiving weird? I stared at him. You're asking me? Yes. To not make it weird? Sarah, you're bringing a woman whose rent you pay to your mother's house for Thanksgiving. She is not a woman. I almost laughed. What is she? His eyes flashed. My friend's sister. I waited. He added, she's basically my sister. That phrase would matter later. At the time I only looked at him and said, fine. He blinked. Fine. Yes. You're not going to start something? No. He relaxed. Actually relaxed. Thank you. I looked at him and realized he thought he had won again. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Lauren filed the divorce petition. I signed everything at lunch. When she asked whether I wanted Mark served immediately, I thought about it. Not yet. Sarah, I know. You're cutting this close. I just need through Thursday. Lauren watched me. You're planning something? No. That was true. I wasn't planning a scene. Mark was perfectly capable of creating one himself. Thanksgiving morning I got 2 emails. The first was from Lauren. Petition filed. The second came from Daniel Foster. It was brief. This confirms the prospective termination of your guarantee has been processed effective as of the date stated in our acknowledgement. I read it twice, then locked my phone. Mark walked into the kitchen dressed for dinner. He looked almost happy. You ready? In a minute. He adjusted his cuff. Kevin says we may have final approval by Monday. Good for you. His smile widened. Once this loan closes, everything changes. I looked at him. I know. He laughed. Finally. Picked up my purse. Yeah, finally. Linda's Thanksgiving dinner started normally. Mark's brother was there with his wife, his sister and her husband. The kids ran ahead. Linda hugged Mark, then me. You look nice, Sarah. Thanks. She lowered her voice. Let's all have a peaceful day. I almost smiled. I'd love that. Then I walked into the dining room and stopped. Ashley was sitting beside Mark's chair. In my seat, the seat I had occupied at every Miller family holiday since before Emma was born. Ashley looked up at me. Her lips curved into a polite little smile. Oh, she glanced at the chair. I hope you don't mind. I looked at Mark. He saw my face and sighed before I said a word. Sarah. I said nothing. He gave me that familiar warning look. Then he pulled out another chair farther down the table. You can sit here. I looked back at Ashley. She didn't move. Neither did I. Mark's smile disappeared. Sarah, don't make this a thing. I set my purse down slowly. For years, I had been told not to make things into things. Don't make the apartment a thing. Don't make the credit card a thing. Don't make the lies a thing. Don't make the divorce lawyer a thing. I looked directly at Ashley. Then I said very calmly, "You're in my seat." And for the first time, no one at that table understood how expensive that chair was about to become. "You're in my seat." Ashley looked up at me as if I had accused her of stealing silverware. For half a second, nobody spoke. Then she smiled. Not embarrassed. Not apologetic. Amused. "Oh, Sarah." She touched the back of the chair. "I didn't realize the seats were assigned." "They're not." Mark's voice came from behind me. I turned. He was already irritated, and I hadn't raised my voice once. "Ashley got here first," he said. "Just sit down." He pulled out the empty chair farther down the table. I looked at it, then back at him. "That's not where I sit." His brother, Eric, gave an awkward laugh. "Come on, guys. It's Thanksgiving." Exactly. It was Thanksgiving. And my husband had brought the woman whose apartment he paid for into his mother's home and put her beside him while asking his wife to move farther down the table. Linda stepped in quickly. "Sarah, honey, we have plenty of chairs." I looked at her. "That isn't the point." Her lips tightened. "I don't think we need a point. I think we need dinner." Ashley started to rise. "I can move." Relief flashed across Linda's face. But Mark put his hand on the back of Ashley's chair. "No." Everyone looked at him. Ashley did too. Mark's jaw was tight. "She doesn't need to move because Sarah decided to make some statement." I stared at him. "A statement?" "Yes. I asked her to get out of my seat." "Exactly." He lowered his voice as if that made the humiliation more private. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Turn nothing into a crisis." I almost laughed. Ashley folded her hands on the table and looked uncomfortable now. But she still didn't stand. Mark gestured toward the other chair. "Sit down." I didn't move. Emma and Noah had stopped talking. I noticed that before anyone else did. Emma was staring at Mark. Noah looked from Ashley to me. I didn't want them in the middle of this. For years, that thought had controlled me. Not in front of the kids. Not at Christmas. Not at birthdays. Not when Mark was stressed. Not when his mother was visiting. There was always a reason to swallow one more insult. Mark apparently believed there would always be another reason. "Sarah," Linda said more firmly now. "Please." I looked at Mark. Why is she sitting there? His eyes narrowed. "You're serious?" "Yes." He let out a sharp breath. "Because she sat down." "Beside you?" "Yes. In the seat I've had at every family dinner for 12 years. Oh my God." He laughed and looked around the table as if everyone else should appreciate how unreasonable I was. His sister, Megan, shifted in her chair. Eric looked down at his plate. Linda's expression hardened. Mark spread his hands. "She's my friend's sister. She's practically family." I tilted my head. "Your sister?" "Basically, yes." Ashley gave a small, nervous laugh. "Mark, maybe I should just..." "No." He cut her off again. Then he looked at me. "You need to stop treating Ashley like some threat." I didn't call her a threat. "You don't have to. You pay her rent." Eric looked up. Megan stopped touching her napkin. Linda's eyes moved toward Mark. He went still. Then his face darkened. "Not here." "Why not?" "Because this is a family dinner." I almost smiled. "That's exactly why I'm asking." Ashley's cheeks turned pink. "The company pays my apartment because I need to be close to clients." Megan blinked. "The company pays your apartment?" Mark shot her a look. "It's a business expense." I nodded. "And her credit card?" Linda looked sharply at him. "What credit card?" Mark clenched his jaw. "Sarah." "No, go ahead." I folded my arms. "Explain it." His face was red now. "Explain what?" "Why your sister gets an apartment, a corporate card, designer clothes, and weekend car shopping trips while you tell our daughter we need to cut back on birthday spending." Emma looked down. That did it. Mark's expression changed from irritation to anger. "You dragged Emma into this?" I stared at him. You posted yourself all over Ashley's Instagram instead of taking your daughter shopping like you promised. That was work. Emma looked up. No, it wasn't. The table went silent. Mark turned toward her. Emma, you were looking at cars. I had a meeting. With Ashley? Yes. Emma's voice was small but steady. You told me you were too busy for me. Sweetheart, that's not what happened. It is. Mark's eyes flicked toward me. That look told me exactly who he blamed for our daughter noticing reality. I stepped slightly between them. Don't. His voice dropped. Don't what? Don't look at me like I put those words in her mouth. You've obviously been talking to her. I didn't have to. Noah suddenly said, Dad likes Ashley more than Mom. Linda gasped. Mark's face went blank. Noah. My son shrank a little in his chair. I put my hand on his shoulder. Hey, it's okay. Mark stared at me. This is unbelievable. I looked at him. No, it's just finally visible. He gave a humorless laugh. You want to know what's visible? Sure. You're jealous. There it was. His favorite answer. I'm jealous? Yes. Of Ashley? You hate that she has a career. You hate that she understands my business. You hate that people like her. Ashley murmured. Mark, stop. He ignored her. You've been home for years, Sarah. You don't know what it takes to operate at this level anymore. I heard Linda breathe out. Maybe even she knew he had gone too far. But Mark kept going. You think because you worked at a bank 8 years ago, you understand my company? I looked at him. No. He gave a bitter smile. Finally, I understand the bank. His smile disappeared. For the first time that day, something uncertain crossed his face. Only for a second. Then he shook it off. Whatever that means. I turned toward Ashley. You have 2 minutes. She blinked. What? I checked my watch. 2 minutes. Mark laughed. Actually laughed. For what? I looked directly at him. If she gets out of my seat in the next 2 minutes, we can finish dinner. Eric frowned. And if she doesn't? I smiled. Then Mark's company is finished. Silence. Then Eric barked out a laugh. He looked embarrassed immediately, but Megan covered her mouth. Linda stared at me. Sarah, that isn't funny. I know. Mark looked at me like I had finally lost my mind. You're insane. Maybe. You think you can destroy Miller Logistics because someone sat in your chair? No. I glanced at my watch again. 1 minute, 38 seconds. Ashley stared at me. Then she leaned back deliberately. It was subtle, but deliberate. She crossed one leg over the other and picked up her wine glass. Mark saw it too. Instead of telling her to stop, he smirked. Stay right there. I nodded. Okay. Linda slapped her napkin onto the table. That's enough. Everybody sit down. I am sitting, Ashley said quietly. Megan looked at her. For the first time, I saw something change in my sister-in-law's expression. Ashley had stopped pretending to be uncomfortable. She was enjoying this. Mark pulled out the chair he had offered me. Sit. I looked at him. 30 seconds. He laughed again. What happens at 0? Lightning strikes? I checked my watch. 10. Sarah. 9. Linda shook her head. Please stop. 8. Ashley's smile tightened. 7. Mark rolled his eyes. 6. Emma was staring at me now. Not frightened. Curious. 5. Mark muttered, this is ridiculous. 4. His phone started ringing. He glanced at it. Kevin Brooks. His CFO. Mark hit decline. I kept counting. 3. The phone rang again. Mark frowned. 2. He declined it again. 1. I looked at Ashley. She stayed seated. I nodded once. Okay. Mark threw up his hands. And? I finally sat down. Not in the chair he had offered me. I pulled another chair away from the wall and placed it at the end of the table. Mark stared. That's it? For now. He shook his head. You need help. Maybe. His phone rang for the 3rd time. Kevin again. Mark cursed under his breath. Linda said, answer it before he keeps calling through dinner. Mark snatched up the phone. What? Kevin was speaking loudly enough that I could hear the panic in his voice even from several feet away. Mark's expression changed immediately. What do you mean they stopped the closing? Nobody moved. His smile vanished. He turned away from us. No. We have final review Monday. A pause. His shoulders tightened. What guarantee? I lowered my eyes. Emma looked at me. I gave her a small smile. Mark's voice rose. No, that doesn't make sense. Kevin spoke again. Mark turned slowly. His eyes found mine. What do you mean Sarah terminated it? Nobody at the table breathed. Mark's face lost color. No. Another pause. No, she already signed the original documents. I rested my hands in my lap. Kevin apparently explained the difference. Mark's mouth opened, closed. Future credit? He stared at me. You're telling me the bank pulled her from the structure? I didn't correct him. This was Kevin's job now. Mark paced 3 steps away from the table. Then replaced the guarantee. A pause. With what? His voice cracked. He looked toward Linda, then Eric, as if one of them might suddenly offer several $1,000,000 in collateral. Kevin kept talking. Mark's face became paler. What financial questions? I raised my eyes. That part was new to him. Maybe more new than the guarantee. What do you mean the receivables don't reconcile? Ashley lowered her wine glass. Mark gripped the back of a chair. No, Kevin, we went through this. Another pause. I told you those contracts are signed. Kevin apparently disagreed. Mark's voice became sharp. They're committed revenue. He listened. They're not hypothetical. More silence. Then, what personal expenses? Ashley froze. I saw it. A tiny movement. Her fingers tightened around the glass. Mark turned farther away. Those are client development costs. Kevin said something else. Mark snapped, the apartment is legitimate. Linda's head jerked toward Ashley. Megan whispered, oh my God. Mark heard her. He turned. His heel caught the leg of the chair behind him. He stumbled backward. For 1 second he tried to recover. Then the chair slid. Mark went down hard. Eric jumped up. Jesus, Mark. Mark slapped away his brother's hand. I'm fine. He scrambled upright, humiliated and furious. Kevin was still talking through the phone. Mark finally shouted, fix it. Then he hung up. No one said anything. I looked at the time on my phone. 5 minutes. Almost exactly. Mark stared at me. What did you do? I didn't answer immediately. He slammed his phone onto the table. What did you do, Sarah? I stopped signing. His face twisted. You called my bank? No. You interfered with my loan. No. You just heard what Kevin said. Yes. I looked him straight in the eyes. I withdrew my continuing guarantee for future borrowing. He stared at me as if I had started speaking another language. You can't do that. I already did. You signed. Yes. For the company. For past and existing obligations subject to the agreement. I kept my voice calm. I did not agree to finance you forever. He pointed at me. You knew this would happen. I knew the bank would have to reassess you without my guarantee. Same thing. No. He laughed wildly. You think you can play technical games? Technical? I leaned forward. You built your expansion financing around my credit, while telling everyone I didn't understand business anymore. His mouth tightened. I built this company. I felt something in me finally let go. Not anger. The need to convince him. Yes, Mark. He stopped. I nodded slowly. You built it. His eyes narrowed. Then why are you doing this? Because you don't get to use my name to build the next version of it. Linda looked between us. What is going on? Mark snapped, she's trying to destroy me. No. I turned toward Linda. I stopped guaranteeing future debt. Linda looked confused. Why would you do that? I looked back at Mark. Because your son consulted a divorce attorney 2 weeks before asking me to sign new financial paperwork. Every face at the table changed. Linda went completely still. What? Mark's eyes flashed. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this. Linda stared at him. You went to a divorce lawyer? Mark ran a hand through his hair. It was a consultation. I laughed softly. Oh, that makes it better. Sarah, shut up. Emma flinched. I looked at him. Mark saw her. For half a second he looked ashamed. Then anger won. You went through my private calendar. It was on the family iPad. You were looking for something. I was clearing a notification. You don't believe me? I stared at him. About which part? He said nothing. The lawyer? Nothing. Ashley? His jaw tightened. The apartment? Ashley suddenly spoke. This isn't fair. Everyone turned toward her. She looked at me. You're making it sound like Mark was secretly funding my entire life. I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't he? No. She looked at Mark for support. The company pays for things because I work there. Megan asked, does the company really pay your rent? Ashley's face flushed. It's part of my compensation. I looked at Mark. Is it? He avoided my eyes. Linda's voice hardened. Mark. He exhaled. Yes, Mom. The company covers her housing. For how long? It's not your business. Linda's face changed. I had never heard him speak to her that way. Apparently neither had she. Ashley looked increasingly nervous. Then Mark's phone buzzed again. A text this time. He read it. His face went white. What? Linda asked. Mark didn't answer. I didn't need to see the screen to know it was bad. He started typing. Ashley leaned toward him. Is the loan gone? Mark ignored her. Mark. What? If the loan doesn't close. She hesitated, then asked the question that changed everything. What happens to my apartment? Nobody spoke. Not one person. Even Mark slowly lowered his phone. Ashley seemed to realize too late how the question sounded. Because the lease renewal is next month. Linda stared at her. Your apartment? Ashley swallowed. Mark said the company would keep paying it. Mark closed his eyes. Ashley. What? I need to know. He looked at her like he had never seen her before. She kept going. And my card, does that still work? Because you said the new budget would cover. Ashley, stop. His voice was low. She blinked. I'm just asking. Linda pushed back from the table. All this time, her voice trembled. You told me Sarah was jealous. Mark looked at her. Mom, you told me she didn't understand business. Mom, please. Linda turned toward me. Her face had gone pale. Then back to Mark. You're paying this woman's rent while your wife is home raising your children? Ashley shot to her feet. I am not this woman. Linda looked at her. And you're worried about your apartment? Ashley's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no sweet answer ready. Mark pointed at me. This is what she wanted. I almost laughed. You think I told Ashley to say that? You set this whole thing up. I didn't put her in my chair. He went silent. I reached into my purse. Not because I had planned to make a show of it. Because I was done pretending. I pulled out the copy Lauren had given me. Mark stared at the papers. What's that? I set them on the table. Something else you should know. He didn't touch them. I pushed them toward him. I filed for divorce 3 days ago. Linda covered her mouth. Emma whispered, Mom. I turned immediately. Sweetheart, we're going to talk about this at home. Mark picked up the first page. His eyes moved down it. He looked at me. No. Yes. You filed? Yes. His face twisted. You planned all of this. I planned to protect myself. You waited until Thanksgiving to humiliate me. I stared at him. I didn't invite Ashley. His voice rose. You're going after the company, aren't you? I'm going after what I'm legally entitled to. You never worked there. I laughed. That one I couldn't help. No. You want to talk about the company's first funding round? His face changed. I stood. The kids stood too. Mark stepped toward me. What are you talking about? Picked up my purse. You might want to ask your lawyer. Ask him what? I looked at him one last time. Where the first $180,000 came from. He stopped moving. I watched the exact second he remembered. The condo. My condo. The check. My money. The wife he had once promised to repay. His face drained. Sarah. I took Emma's hand. Noah grabbed my other one. Behind us, Ashley asked Mark in a frightened voice. So, does this mean I have to move? I almost laughed. I didn't. I walked out with my children. For years, Mark had believed everything holding up his life belonged to him. His company, his house, his reputation, his wife. That Thanksgiving, he learned the difference between owning something and simply being allowed to use it. And the phone calls were only beginning. Mark called me 14 times before midnight. I answered none of them. The 15th call came from Linda. I almost ignored that one too. Then I looked at Emma and Noah sitting on the couch in my mother's house and picked up. Hello? Linda's voice shook. Sarah. I waited. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. Not because I was ready to forgive her. Because I had spent years waiting to hear those words from somebody in that family. And now that they had finally come, they didn't fix nearly as much as I once imagined they would. For what? I asked. There was a long pause. For not believing you. I looked across the room. Emma was pretending to watch TV. She wasn't. Noah had fallen asleep with his head against her arm. Linda continued. I kept telling you Mark was under pressure. Yes. I told you Ashley was practically family. Yes. I told you that you didn't understand his business anymore. That one still hurt. You did. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. I leaned back in the chair. Linda, I can't do this tonight. I know. No, I mean it. The kids hurt enough. I understand. I almost laughed. 4 years. Nobody in that family had understood until understanding became unavoidable. Linda whispered, is Mark with you? No. He left here 20 minutes ago. My stomach tightened. Where did he go? I don't know. Then I heard her inhale sharply. He was yelling at Ashley. That surprised me less than it should have. What happened? Linda gave a bitter little laugh. What do you think happened? I said nothing. She kept asking about the apartment. Of course she did. And the credit card. Of course she did. Linda's voice hardened. Then she asked whether Mark could still pay for a trip they had planned in December. I looked down. A trip. That was new. Where? Miami. I laughed once. There was no humor in it. Mark had told me December would be too busy for us to take the kids anywhere over winter break. Linda said quietly, I didn't know. I know. I swear to you, Sarah, I didn't know. That doesn't change what you did know. Silence. You knew he was disrespecting me. Yes. You knew he was choosing her over family things. Yes. You knew I was uncomfortable. Yes. And every time I said something, you told me to be more understanding. Linda started crying. I felt tired instead of satisfied. I'm not saying this to punish you, I said. I need you to understand why an apology tonight doesn't make everything normal. I do. I hope you mean that. I do. I looked at Emma again. Her eyes were still on the television. Good night, Linda. Sarah. Yes. Please tell the children I love them. I will. I hung up. Emma spoke immediately. Grandma? Yes. What did she want? I hesitated. The old Sarah would have protected every adult in the room. The new Sarah was learning that protecting children did not mean lying to them. She apologized. Emma looked surprised. For Dad? For herself. That seemed to make sense to her. She nodded, then asked, Are you really divorcing Dad? There it was. The question I had been dreading. I moved beside her. Yes. Her eyes filled instantly. Noah woke up. What happened? Emma wiped her cheek angrily. Mom and Dad are getting divorced. Noah stared at me. Like Tyler's parents? Yes. Do we have to move? Eventually, probably. Do I have to change schools? I don't know yet, but I'm going to do everything I can so you don't. Is Dad leaving? I took a breath. Dad and I won't live together anymore. Noah's face crumpled. Because of Ashley? Emma looked at me too. I could have said no. I could have made the answer simpler. Instead I said, Ashley is part of a bigger problem. But this is between me and your dad. Emma frowned. Dad was mean to you. I swallowed. Yes. And you're mad. I am. So you're leaving because you're mad? No. I took her hand. I'm leaving because being treated badly over and over isn't something I want either of you to think is normal. She stared at me. That was probably more than a 10-year-old should have needed to understand. But she understood enough. Noah leaned into me. Are we still a family? I hugged him. Yes. That answer came easily. We're just going to be a family in a different way. The next morning, Mark showed up at my mother's house at 7:30. He pounded on the door hard enough to wake everyone. My mother came out of the hallway in her robe. Is that him? Yes. I'm calling the police if he starts yelling. Mom. I mean it. I opened the door but did not step aside. Mark looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were red. He looked like he had not slept. We need to talk. Not here. Then come outside. No. Sarah. The kids are here. I know. They're my kids. Then act like it. His face changed. You embarrass me in front of my entire family. I stared at him. You came here at 7:30 in the morning to say that? You ambushed me. I withdrew my own guarantee. You knew the loan depended on it. I suspected. You knew. Mark, the bank didn't stop the closing just because of me. His eyes flickered. There. That was the part he didn't want to discuss. I lowered my voice. What did Kevin mean by receivables not reconciling? Nothing. What personal expenses are in the company books? Nothing illegal. I didn't ask if they were illegal. He looked away. I folded my arms. How much company money went to Ashley? That is none of your business. I almost smiled. We're married. I helped fund the company. You're using business accounts while we're preparing to divide marital assets. His jaw tightened. It is absolutely my business now. He stared at me for several seconds. Then his voice softened. It was almost more dangerous than the anger. Come home. No. Sarah, stop. I'm not coming home. We can fix this. I actually laughed. What exactly are you trying to fix? Our marriage. Why? He looked stunned. What do you mean, why? Why do you want me back? Because you're my wife. That didn't stop you from seeing a divorce lawyer. That was one consultation. And I was confused. I nodded slowly. You were confused enough to pay $450. He looked irritated again. I needed to understand my options. And now I understand mine. Sarah. He stepped closer. I made mistakes. I said nothing. I admit that. What mistakes? His mouth tightened. You know. No. I shook my head. Say them. He stared at me. Do we have to do this? Yes. He rubbed a hand over his face. I should have told you more about the company. Keep going. I should have handled Ashley differently. Different how? His eyes flashed. Jesus. Different how, Mark? He looked toward the driveway. Finally he muttered, I should have set better boundaries. With your sister? He flinched. That's not what I meant. No, I think that's exactly what you meant. He lowered his voice. Nothing happened. I looked at him. I didn't ask. That stopped him. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then I asked, did you sleep with her? Mark's face changed. Not enough to answer. Enough to tell me the truth was complicated. That's not relevant. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Wow. Sarah, you came here asking me to come home, and you can't answer that question? It wasn't. He stopped. I laughed quietly. What? He looked furious with himself. It wasn't serious. There it was. Not no. Not never. Not she's like a sister. It wasn't serious. I stepped back. Mark reached for my arm. I pulled away. Don't touch me. Sarah, leave. He panicked then. I saw it. Not because he loved me so deeply, because he realized the argument had changed. I said it wasn't serious. You should put that on a greeting card. It was a mistake. How many times? He said nothing. How many? Twice. I stared at him. Then he added quickly, months ago. I laughed. That was the moment I stopped caring about exact dates. He had lied so many times that finding one more lie did not change the decision. Go home, Mark. You are my home. I looked at him. No. His face fell. For a second he looked genuinely wounded. I almost hated myself for still noticing. Then I remembered him telling Emma he was too busy for her while shopping for a Mercedes with Ashley. You built a home you didn't respect, I said. That's not the same thing. I closed the door. 3 days later Lauren called. The bank formally declined to proceed with the expansion facility under the current structure. I was sitting in my car outside work. Declined? For now. What does that mean? It means Mark can seek other financing, offer more collateral, inject equity, or change the deal. So the company isn't collapsing. No. Her tone sharpened. And you need to stop thinking of this as whether the company survives. I know. Do you? Yes. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I don't want employees losing jobs because of me. They are not losing jobs because you declined to guarantee additional debt. I know. If Mark overexpanded, overleveraged, or misrepresented financial performance, that is on management. I closed my eyes. Okay. Also, his attorney contacted me. My stomach tightened. What did they say? Mark wants to discuss reconciliation before moving forward. I laughed out loud. Lauren did not. He also wants you to agree not to seek any claim tied to your initial contribution to the business. My laughter stopped. There it is. Yes. So reconciliation comes with a waiver? Apparently. I stared through the windshield. For years, Mark had accused me of seeing everything as suspicious. Now I almost admired how predictable he had become. He wants the wife back, I said, but only if the wife gives up the money. Lauren replied, that is one interpretation. It's the correct one. I didn't say it wasn't. Within 2 weeks, the consequences started showing. Mark canceled the new warehouse lease. Then he sold one of the company's luxury SUVs. Kevin told him the business needed to conserve cash. I knew because Mark complained about it during a custody exchange. This whole thing is insane, he said as Noah ran inside to grab his backpack. What is? I had to sell the Escalade. I stared at him. Okay. What do you want me to say? That you're happy? I don't care what you drive. He laughed bitterly. You always hated that car. I hated that you told me we couldn't afford summer camp. while leasing a $90,000 vehicle through the company. It was for clients. Of course. His face hardened. You really enjoy this? No, I meant it. I enjoy not being responsible for fixing it. That shut him up. Ashley lasted 18 days. I knew the exact number because on the 19th day, Mark called at 10 at night. I almost didn't answer. Then I saw the kids were with him. Is everything okay? With the kids? Yes. What happened? He was silent. Then he said, Ashley quit. I leaned against my kitchen counter. Okay, that's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? She left. Yes, she found another job. Good for her. His breathing changed. You knew she would. I almost laughed. Mark, I barely know her. You knew what she was. That sentence made me angry. Not because he was wrong. Because he was trying to make me responsible for warning him about the woman he chose over me. I knew what you were doing. That's not what I said. No, but it's what matters. She said she didn't sign up for all this. I closed my eyes. What did you expect? I helped her. Yes, I gave her everything. Almost. He went quiet. I continued. You kept the wife who raised your kids and backed your company around too. Sarah, she didn't steal something from you. You offered her a lifestyle and she liked the lifestyle. That's cold. No, my voice stayed calm. It's accurate. He laughed bitterly. You sound like a credit report. Maybe you should have listened to one. I hung up. A month later, Mark moved out of our house. The temporary financial agreement gave me exclusive use of the home with the children until we worked out the final settlement. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment near Dublin. The first weekend Emma and Noah stayed with him, they came home quiet. I waited until dinner before asking, how was Dad's? Noah shrugged. Fine. Emma said nothing. I looked at her. What happened? Nothing. Emma. She pushed food around her plate. Dad was on his phone the whole time. Noah jumped in. He yelled at Uncle Kevin. Kevin isn't your uncle. I know. Emma looked up. He kept saying everything was because of you. My chest tightened. What exactly did he say? That you took his company away. I set down my fork. And what did you say? Her eyes narrowed. I told him you didn't take it. I tried not to react. What happened then? He told me not to talk about things I don't understand. I almost laughed at the cruelty of the pattern. Mark was now using the same sentence on our daughter that he had used on me. Emma continued. So I told him maybe he should stop saying that to women.
Isterte her.
Noah grinned. She was awesome. I covered my mouth. Not because it was funny. Because I did not want my children fighting my battles. Listen to me. Both of them looked at me. You do not have to defend me to your dad. Emma frowned. But he lies. I know. You don't care?
Icare.
But it's not your job to fix him. She looked uncertain. I reached for her hand. You're allowed to love him and be angry with him at the same time. Her eyes filled. What if I don't want to go next weekend? That hurt. I had never wanted this. I had wanted Mark to be a better husband. Now I was watching him risk becoming a distant father too. We'll talk to Lauren, I said. And we'll talk to Dad. But nobody is going to force you to pretend you're happy when you're not. A week later, Linda asked me to meet for coffee. I almost said no. Then I went. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just less certain. I owe you more than an apology, she said. I waited. I kept defending him because admitting what he was doing would mean admitting I raised a man who could do that. I looked at her. That wasn't my burden to carry. I know. You made it mine anyway. Her eyes filled. Yes. I said nothing. Linda wiped them. I told you to be patient because it was easier than telling Mark to stop. That was the first thing she had said that sounded fully honest. I nodded. Yes.
I'm sorry.
This time I believed her. Not enough to erase everything. Enough to move forward carefully. I'm not keeping the kids from you, I said. Her face changed with relief. But there will be boundaries. Anything. No showing up without calling. Yes. No asking Emma questions about the divorce. Of course. No telling Noah his father's business problems are my fault. Linda looked ashamed. I won't. And if Mark uses you to pressure me, I stop the conversation. She nodded. I understand. For once I thought she did. At work I was beginning to feel like myself again. Not the old Sarah exactly. Something stronger. One afternoon Patricia handed me a file. Small business refinance. I opened it. The borrower was a 42-year-old woman named Denise Harper. Recently divorced. trying to refinance a bakery she had run with her husband. When Denise came in, she looked embarrassed before she even sat down. My ex handled all the finances. She gave a nervous laugh. I know that sounds stupid. I looked at her. No, it doesn't. I should have known more. Maybe. She looked surprised. I smiled gently, but beating yourself up won't teach you anything. I turned the credit report toward her. So let's start here. We spent 40 minutes going through debt, payment history, business cash flow, and what she needed to rebuild. When she left, Patricia appeared in my doorway. You were good with her. I looked down at the file. I knew what she felt like. That's useful. For the first time, I wondered whether everything I had gone through could become something other than damage. That evening, Mark called. His voice sounded exhausted. Was it worth it? I was standing outside the grocery store. What? All of this? What exactly is all of this? The company shrinking. Ashley leaving. The house. The lawyers. I stayed quiet. He continued. Destroying everything. There was a time when that accusation would have sent me into a panic. I would have listed every reason I was not cruel, every sacrifice I had made, every chance I had given him. I didn't do that anymore. I didn't destroy it, Mark. He laughed bitterly. Right. I stopped holding it up. Silence. I could hear his breathing. Then he said, same difference. No. I looked at the shopping cart beside me. For the first time in years, I had bought groceries without worrying whether Mark would question a charge while approving thousands for somebody else. It only feels the same to the person who thought I would keep holding it forever. He hung up. I stood there for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. An email. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the subject line. Mortgage application approved. I stared at the screen. My application. My income. My credit. My name. Approved. Not for a mansion. Not for some dramatic victory house. A 3-bedroom place in Westerville with enough room for Emma and Noah and a small backyard. Noah had already begged to put a basketball hoop in. I read the email again. Then I laughed. A woman pushing a cart past me glanced over. I didn't care. For years, Mark had convinced me that security came from staying attached to him. His company. His income. His decisions. His house. His future. But that evening, standing in a grocery store parking lot with a mortgage approval on my phone, I finally understood something. I had never needed Mark to give me stability. I had helped create his. Now I was building my own. The day my divorce became final, Lauren asked me how I felt. We were standing outside the courthouse in downtown Columbus, and I knew what people were supposed to say in moments like that. Free. Relieved. Heartbroken. Victorious. Instead, I looked at her and said, quiet. Lauren studied me. Quiet. I nodded. For the first time in years, nobody is asking me to explain why I'm upset. She smiled. That sounds like relief. Maybe. The settlement had taken months. There were no handcuffs, no criminal charges, no judge ordering Mark to surrender everything he owned. Real life was less dramatic than that, and somehow more satisfying. Mark kept Miller Logistics, a much smaller version of it. The expansion was dead. 2 leased vehicles were returned. The company sold the Escalade. The downtown entertainment budget disappeared. Several proposed hires never happened. Mark had to inject some of his own retained earnings to stabilize the business. Kevin Brooks stayed as CFO. Although I heard through Linda that he had threatened to quit twice, I didn't ask for details. I no longer needed every piece of Mark's life. That was part of healing too. My original contribution to the company had been complicated. The money from my premarital condo had gone into a business formed during our marriage, and years of marital finances had mixed together after that. Lauren warned me early that I was not simply going to get a check for exactly $180,000. So we negotiated. I received a larger share of certain liquid marital assets, protection from specific business liabilities, and credit for a significant portion of the traceable funds I had originally contributed. It wasn't revenge. It was accounting. And for once, accounting worked in my favor. Mark complained anyway. At the final settlement conference, he leaned toward his lawyer and whispered loudly enough for me to hear. She's taking everything. Lauren didn't even look up from her notes. I did. Everything. Mark stared at me. I kept my voice low. You still own the company. A company you crippled. You still have your retirement account. His jaw tightened. You have your car. A Honda. I almost laughed. Yes, Mark. A Honda. His lawyer touched his arm. Mark, but he wasn't done. You got the house for months. For the kids. You got the better cash position. Because I gave up any claim to operational control of the company you insisted was entirely yours. His face changed. He hated when I repeated his own words back to him. Lauren finally looked over. Should we continue? Mark sat back. His mouth twisted. Fine. That was one of the last times we argued about money. Not because Mark stopped blaming me, because I stopped defending myself. A few weeks later, I closed on the house in Westerville. It was not impressive by Mark's old standards. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small backyard, a kitchen with cabinets I plan to repaint eventually. No marble island, no wine refrigerator, no oversized garage designed to impress neighbors. Emma loved it immediately. She walked into the smaller bedroom upstairs and said, "This one." I laughed. "You haven't seen the other one. This one has the better wall." "What does that mean?" "For pictures." Apparently that settled it. Noah ran from room to room before stopping at the back door. "Can we put a hoop out there?" "A basketball hoop?" "Yes. You know you can't dribble on grass, right?" He rolled his eyes. "On the driveway, Mom." "Oh, obviously." He shook his head dramatically. "You don't understand sports." For one terrible second I heard Mark. Then Noah grinned. "But I can teach you." I laughed and pulled him into a hug. "That sounds fair." Moving day was exhausting. Linda came to help. A year earlier I would never have believed that. She arrived with sandwiches, paper towels, and 2 boxes of things she said every new house needs. Before walking in, she stood on the porch and asked, "Is now still okay?" It was such a small question. But I noticed. "Yes," I said.
Come in.
She smiled. Our relationship wasn't what it had been. It was more careful now. And I preferred that. Linda no longer called 3 times in a row if I didn't answer. She didn't ask Emma what Mark had said about me. She didn't tell Noah that his father was going through a hard time because of the divorce. And if Mark complained to her, she did not bring the complaint to me. One afternoon, months after the Thanksgiving dinner, she finally admitted why. "He asked me to tell you that you were being unreasonable about weekends." I looked at her over coffee, and I told him to call his attorney.
Is det här?
Linda shrugged. "I'm learning." I smiled. "So am I." Mark's relationship with the kids was more complicated. At first, every weekend at his apartment turned into a complaint. He's always working. He gets mad when his phone rings. He orders takeout every night. He doesn't know where Noah's soccer stuff is. Then something changed. Not dramatically. Not enough to make Mark into a new man overnight. But enough that I noticed. He began showing up to Emma's school events. Not every one, but more than before. He started taking Noah to soccer practice himself. He learned which inhaler Noah kept in his sports bag. He stopped asking me to pack everything for the kids before they went to his place. One Friday, he came to pick them up and Noah shouted from upstairs, "Dad, did you remember my cleats?" Mark called back, "They're already in the car." Noah came running down. "Really?" Mark looked offended. "Yes, really." Emma muttered, "Growth." I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from laughing. Mark heard her. For a moment I expected him to snap. Instead he looked at our daughter and said, "Fair." That surprised all 3 of us. He still blamed me sometimes, but less often in front of the kids. Lauren had made sure the parenting agreement was clear about disparaging the other parent. I suspected his attorney had made the consequences equally clear. Whatever the reason, I was grateful. I did not need Mark to become a good ex-husband. I needed him to become a better father. Whether he managed that would be up to him. At work, my life expanded faster than I expected. Patricia gave me more complex files. I started leading borrower meetings again. Then our bank partnered with the local community center on a financial education program. The original idea was simple: credit basics, household budgeting, debt, small business lending. One afternoon, Patricia walked into my office. "I volunteered you." I looked up. "For what?" "A workshop." "No." She smiled. "You don't even know what it is." "I hate public speaking." "You spoke in credit committee last Thursday. That was 8 people. This will be maybe 20. "Absolutely not." Patricia leaned against my door. "Most of the women signed up are recently divorced or separated." I stopped. She knew exactly what she was doing. "That's manipulative." "Yes." I sighed. "What's the workshop called?" "Financial Independence After Divorce." I stared at her. Patricia smiled. See you Thursday. The first session had 19 women. I expected questions about credit scores. I got those. I expected questions about refinancing. I got those too. What I didn't expect was how many women started their questions with apologies. I know I should have known this. This is probably stupid. My husband handled all of it. I feel so embarrassed. The fifth time I heard it, I put down my marker. Can I say something? The room became quiet. A woman named Monica nodded. I looked around. Not knowing something does not make you stupid. Several women looked down. I continued. A lot of marriages divide responsibilities. Sometimes one person handles money. Sometimes one person handles the children. Sometimes one person knows the insurance and the other knows the taxes. A woman in the front row said, but I signed things I didn't understand. So did I. Her head came up. I hadn't planned to say that. But once I did, I kept going. I worked in commercial credit before I stayed home with my kids. I knew exactly how financial documents worked. Someone frowned. And you still signed? Yes. Why? I smiled sadly. Because expertise doesn't protect you from trust. The room went completely silent. I took a breath. The point isn't to hate yourself for what you didn't question 5 years ago. The point is to learn what you need to know now. Monica raised her hand. So where do we start? I turned back to the board. Credit report. A few women laughed. I did too. Not glamorous but very useful. That workshop became monthly, then twice a month. Sometimes women came because they were leaving abusive marriages. Sometimes because their husbands had died and they had never paid a bill. Sometimes because they simply wanted to understand their own finances before anything went wrong. I never told them to divorce. I never told them all men were dangerous. I told them to know what they signed, know which accounts carried their names, know whether they had retirement savings, know whether they had credit, know what obligations belonged to them, things I once understood professionally and ignored personally. One night after a workshop, a woman stayed behind. Her name was Denise. She was the bakery owner I had helped months earlier. You remember me? Of course. She smiled. I refinanced. My face lit up. You did? Closed last week. That's fantastic. Her eyes filled. I almost sold the business. But you didn't. No. She laughed shakily. My ex used to say I couldn't run it without him. I knew that sentence. Maybe not those exact words. But I knew it. Denise looked at me. You helped me prove him wrong. I shook my head. No. She frowned. You proved him wrong. That night I drove home smiling. Not because Mark had lost. Because somebody else had stopped believing she was helpless. Months later, Mark came by on a Sunday evening to drop off the kids. Emma went inside first. Noah followed shouting, Mom, Dad says I can try out for travel soccer. I looked at Mark. You said yes? He shrugged. He really wants it. That means weekend tournaments. I know. Driving. I know. Early mornings. He gave me a tired look. Yes, Sarah. I understand soccer involves leaving the house. I laughed. He almost smiled. For a second, we looked like the people we might have become if we had learned how to respect each other before everything broke. Then the moment passed. Mark looked at the house. You fixed the cabinets. Painted them. Looks good. Thanks. He put his hands in his pockets. The arrogance that used to fill every conversation was gone. Not completely, but enough. It's nice here, he said. It is. He nodded. Then he looked at me. I really thought you'd never leave. There was no accusation in his voice. That almost made it sadder. I know. He gave a small laugh. I mean, I knew you were mad. But you thought I'd stay. Yes. I nodded. I know. His eyebrows pulled together. Why didn't you warn me? I stared at him. Mark. I'm serious. I did. He shook his head. No. You went from being upset to filing for divorce. No. I stepped closer, not angry. Just tired of the rewritten history. I warned you when I asked why Ashley's apartment was being paid by your company. He looked away. I warned you when you missed Emma's birthday shopping to spend the day with her. His jaw tightened. I warned you when I asked why another woman had a company card. While you told me we needed to cut household expenses. Sarah, I warned you every time I asked you to treat me like your partner. He looked at me again. And what did you do? He said nothing. You called me jealous. Silence. You called me insecure. He swallowed. You told me I didn't understand business anymore. His face tightened. You told me I was dramatic. I paused. You heard every warning, Mark. His eyes dropped. You just didn't think they mattered. For once he didn't argue. After a moment he nodded. Probably. I hadn't expected that. Neither of us spoke. Then he looked toward the house. Take care of them. I almost corrected him. They were his children too. But I understood what he meant. You two. He nodded and walked to his car. That was the closest thing we ever had to closure. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Just truth without another fight. A few weeks later we had our first real family dinner in the new house. Not takeout eaten between unpacked boxes. A real dinner. Emma helped make pasta. Noah nearly burned the garlic bread. He blamed the oven. The oven is literally new, Emma said. So it's not the oven. You don't know that. I watched you forget the timer. I was busy. With what? My life. I laughed. Both of you sit down. Emma carried the salad to the table. Noah grabbed his drink. I brought the pasta over. Then Emma stopped beside one of the chairs. Mom? Yeah. She looked at the table. Then at me. Which one is your seat? I froze. For a second I was back at Linda's Thanksgiving table. Ashley beside Mark. Everyone telling me it was just a chair. Mark telling me to sit somewhere else. My children watching. 2 minutes. Kevin's phone call. The divorce papers. Everything that followed. Emma must have seen something on my face. She smiled. I was just asking. I looked at the chairs. Then I looked at my children. And I laughed. I don't have one. Noah frowned. What? I can sit wherever I want. Emma grinned. So can I? Absolutely. Noah immediately moved into Emma's chair. Then I want this one. Hey, you heard Mom. Emma shoved his shoulder. Move. Noah assigned seats. I started laughing harder. Emma looked at me in disbelief. You created this. Apparently. She finally dragged another chair out. I sat at the end of the table. Not because it was the head. Not because it meant anything. Because it was closest. We ate. We argued about soccer. Emma told me about a girl at school who had copied her science project idea. Noah asked if we could get a dog. I said no. He began a negotiation that apparently included 37 reasons we needed a Labrador. Nothing about the dinner looked important. That was what made it important. Years earlier, I had sold the first home I owned to help my husband build a company. Then I gave up my career to keep our family running. Somewhere along the way, I let Mark convince me that because he earned the bigger paycheck, he had built our life by himself. I believed that lie longer than I want to admit. I thought losing him would mean losing security, losing my family, losing the future. Instead, I lost the part of my life that required me to become smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I got my career back. I got my credit back. I got my voice back. More importantly, my children watched me learn that love did not require humiliation. A home did not belong to the loudest person in it. And a woman did not need permission to take up space. Emma reached for another piece of garlic bread. Noah shouted, "That's mine. There are 4 more. But I wanted that one." Emma rolled her eyes. I smiled at them. Then Emma caught me watching. What? Nothing. She narrowed her eyes. You're doing the mom thing. What mom thing? The weird smiling thing. I laughed. Eat your dinner. Yes, ma'am. I leaned back in my chair. My chair for that evening. Maybe a different one tomorrow. It didn't matter anymore. Because nobody was going to tell me where I belonged. Not Mark. Not Linda. Not Ashley. Not fear. I looked around the table that belonged to the 3 of us and finally understood what I should have known years ago. I never needed someone to save me a seat. I just needed to remember I had the right to choose one. And from now on, I would sit wherever I wanted.